Story time about how I caught my boyfriend cheating on me and I got him arrested. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My boyfriend and I have only been together for 2 months. I'm gonna call him Rex. We live in a pretty small town and everybody knows that Rex is a player. He asked me out and I said yes because I always had a crush on him. After a few dates, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes under the condition that he was totally monogamous. And he said of course. A few weeks into the relationship, I noticed that he was always hiding his phone from me. And whenever he would put his phone on a table, he would flip the screen side down. Of course, this had me on high alert. One night we went out with friends and I made sure that he got super drunk. I took advantage and went through all of his Instagram DMs. And of course he had been talking to about 30 girls. And I knew some of these girls and they knew that we were together. He had even set up a date with one of the girls for the following day at a bar. And you better believe that I was gonna catch him red-handed. I show up to the bar and I don't see them. I go back to the parking lot and there he is in his car making out with this girl. I knock on the window. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend is in his car making out with another girl. I caught them red-handed. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My boyfriend Rex quickly puts on his shirt, and the other girl puts on her shirt too. I try to open the door, but it's locked. And to my surprise, my boyfriend gets mad at me and asks me what I'm doing there. So of course I say to him, "What are you doing here?" That's when he finally gets out of the car, and he tells the other girl to stay in the car. I told him that he had promised to be monogamous. That's when he said that I was crazy and that he had never promised that, and that he had no intention to be serious with me. Then he said that I made that entire conversation up in my head. And then he told me to leave. I was so shocked. I couldn't believe what he had just said to me. The girl gets out of the car and she actually apologizes to me. And she told me that Rex had told her that he was single. Then Rex lunges at her, starts pulling her hair, and pushes her to the ground. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend lunges at the girl that I just caught him cheating on me with. He starts pulling her hair and pushes her to the ground. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Tried to get him to stop and I pulled his arm. Then he turns around and starts chasing me. I run back into the bar and 2 guys stop him. I called the cops right away and they came and arrested him. Later on that day, he asked me to bail him out and I said no. Everybody knows what he did. The other girl is trying to press charges and my dad wants me to get a restraining order. But I'm still in love with him and I don't want to get him in any more trouble. I even want to take him back, but I know I shouldn't, right? Story time about my horrible toxic ex. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My ex and I had been friends for 3 months, and he asked me out. I said yes because I really liked him. But the relationship only lasted 1 month. He started showing red flags really quick. He would constantly try to monopolize my time. If I told him that I couldn't hang out, he would show up to my house randomly without even asking if he could come over. It's like he was checking to see if I was telling the truth or not. Anytime I would be babysitting, he would also show up and ask to hang out. Obviously, I would say no because I was working. He also monitored all of my social media. If I posted anything about BLM, he would get so angry and he wouldn't talk to me. One day I get a text from him saying, "I don't think this is gonna work out anymore." He actually broke up with me over text. I was on a road trip with my family at the time, so I was so distracted and I thought I'd be okay. A few days later, I find out he started dating my best friend. Then he started sending me abusive text messages. Part 2 is up. My ex started sending me abusive text messages, calling me an SLUT and saying that I was stupid. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Tried to reason with him, but he just wouldn't listen. Of course, I ended up blocking him. A few days later, he showed up at my house. I asked him why he was there. He said he was just riding his bike around. I didn't buy it for 1 second. He made it a habit of just showing up to my house on his bike. Then he started texting me from another number. He was constantly trying to get my attention. Of course, I blocked that number as well. And I get a message from my best friend who had started dating my ex when we broke up. She asked me if we could hang out and I said yes. Talked for a few hours and we made up. She explained to me how verbally abusive he was with her too and that he was stalking her as well. But guess what? It gets worse. On top of all of that, he called my sister and started telling her that I was too fat for him, that I was unattractive, and that I didn't bring enough energy into the relationship and that that's why he broke up with me. That's when I called him and we got into a huge fight. Part 3 is up. My ex called my sister and told her that I was too fat for him and that I was unattractive and that's why he had to break up with me. That's when we got into a huge fight over the phone. Of course, we both said extremely hurtful things. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Like I said, he had been stalking me and sending me abusive text messages. I kept blocking him and he would keep coming back. Then again, he would show up at my house. His excuse was that he was riding his bike around my neighborhood. I told him I needed space. A few days later, I'm hanging out with my friends and there he is. Shows up totally uninvited. Everyone knew what had happened, but he still tried to talk to me. Of course, I ignored him. A few hours later, I get a ton of notifications from Instagram. Guess what? It's my ex. He started begging for forgiveness. He was trying to justify every single thing he did. There was no excuse for his abusive behavior. Not to me or my best friend. I told him to leave me alone, but he still kept sending the messages. They're starting to get to me. I know I shouldn't want to be with him, but part of me still loves him. He's the first person I've ever fallen in love with. I don't know what to do. Storytime about how I found out my sugar daddy was stalking me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I signed up to a sugar daddy website last year. I lost my job because of COVID. Just started my own small business and things were not going well. I also helped my parents out with money because I didn't want them to be working during COVID. I signed up to a website and instantly I started getting messages. One man stood out because he was very active and owned several businesses. I told him I didn't want to meet up because I just wasn't going to do that, but also because of COVID. He agreed to have a phone conversation with me and then eventually he offered me $5,000 a month. This was more than enough to help me and my parents out. After that, I was basically his online companion. He would text me and I would text back. We went out to dinner a few times, but because of COVID, we kept our distance. It was truly the perfect scenario for me. Then I noticed that he started to get really clingy. If I didn't text him back right away, he would get upset. One day I got another message from the sugar daddy website. Another man was asking me to go out to dinner twice a week, and he wanted to pay me $1,000 for this. So I said, of course. When I told sugar daddy number one that I'd be busy 2 days out of the week, he got really mad and asked me where I lived. I told him I couldn't tell him. Part 2 is up. That's when my sugar daddy asked me where I lived. I was not about to tell him where I lived. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I told him I couldn't tell him, and he got really upset and offered me $2,000 more, which means that he would be paying me $7,000 a month. Then he said that he didn't want me to be with any other sugar daddies. At this point, I hadn't even told him that I was approached by another sugar daddy. So how did he know that I was talking to another one? I accepted his offer of $7,000 a month, but this only made him even worse. He would call me all the time and ask me where I was, and he would constantly ask me where I lived. He noticed a change in me, and that's when he offered to buy me a car. A Mercedes, to be exact. I didn't know if I should accept or not because I knew it would make him feel like he had more ownership over me. I told him that I wasn't sure if I should accept the car because of his behavior. Then he said that he would buy me my own apartment. I felt really creeped out, so I decided not to answer his phones or his messages the rest of the night. 2 hours later, I'm laying in bed and I hear a really hard knock at my door. It was him. Part 3 is my sugar daddy starts banging on my front door. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. And he didn't know where I lived. I look through the peephole and I tell him to leave. That's when he shows me a wad of cash. He tells me I can keep it with no strings attached. I said no, and that's when he started calling me names. He started yelling really loud. I was hoping my neighbors would hear and call the cops. In order to calm him down, I opened the door and I let him in. Big mistake. He asked to use my bathroom, and that's when I grabbed his phone. I saw on his camera roll that he had pictures and video of me. He'd been following me around for months. I started calling the cops, but that's when he came out of the bathroom. I asked if he could stay over and I said yes. I was so scared. We're supposed to have dinner tonight. The cops said they can't help because he hasn't hurt. Part 4. I checked my sugar daddy's cell phone. There were so many pictures and videos of me, which means he had been following me around for months. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I told him I was sick and he had to sleep on the couch. The following day, he left my apartment really early, so I called the police and I told them everything. They told me they can't do anything because he hasn't physically hurt me yet. My sugar daddy asked me out for dinner and I had to say yes, just to act like everything was normal. At dinner, he acted completely normal, like he hadn't showed up to my apartment the night before and yelled at me. That's when he offered me more money and the new apartment again. I told him I just couldn't accept it. Then I confronted him about the pictures and video on his cell phone. Of course, he denied everything. I asked to see his phone and he handed it to me. And of course, he had deleted all the evidence. So now it's just my word against his. Then he handed me keys to my new car. It's a beautiful car. I don't even know if I should accept it or not. Should I get a restraining order? I don't know what to do. Story time about how I caught my dad doing the dirty with my best friend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My mom and dad have been married for 30 years. My dad started modeling when he was really young and he still does it to this day. Every single time that I would bring a friend over to my house, they would always talk about how cute my dad is. It never annoyed me at all because I was so proud of my dad, but it really bothered my mom. So out of respect for my mom, I would just tell my friends not to say anything. My mom is definitely the jealous type. My best friend and I have known each other for about 3 years. She was the new girl at school and we became friends, and ever since then we've been inseparable. She always comes over to my house, we have sleepovers, and my family really likes her. My mom even takes her shopping with us and buys her tons of stuff. She always comes with us to get manicures and pedicures and facials as well. A few years ago, my mom told me that my dad was unfaithful to her and it really upset me. Basically, my mom couldn't trust him at all. And ever since then, I've kept an eye on him as well. One day I came home early from work. I see my best friend sitting on the couch with my dad. She was kissing his neck. When they saw me, they got up from the couch. Part 2, I see my best friend kissing my dad on the neck. And when they both saw me, they jumped off the couch right away. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My best friend said, "Oh, you're finally home." And my dad literally just walked toward the kitchen like nothing had happened. My best friend walks toward me to give me a hug, but I stop her straight in her tracks. I asked her why she was kissing my dad's neck. She laughs and said, "Of course I wasn't." And then I said, "I just saw it." And she said that she was just thanking him for all the stuff my mom and dad do for her. Right, I was not buying it. My dad didn't even look me in the eyes after that. I decided not to question her any further, but I was really angry with my best friend. After that, I was totally convinced that there was something going on between them. So I decided to set a trap. I told my mom and dad I would be at work all day and that I would be home really late. And I told my best friend the same thing and that I wouldn't be able to hang out with her. I knew that my mom would be at work all day, which meant that my dad had the house all to himself. I said bye to my dad, but I sneaked back into the house and hid in my room all day. Then I started hearing voices. It sounded just like my best friend. I opened my dad's bedroom door and there they are on the bed doing the dirty. Disgusting, part 3 is up. I walk in on my dad and my best friend doing the dirty. They had no clothes on and they were doing it in my mom's bed. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Because I am so intelligent, I recorded the whole thing on my phone. My father had the audacity to
the time. I hope you don't mind. Can't I see you again?